In my last video about domain-driven design, I talked about the 4 key benefits or the 4 major areas where domain-driven design helps us make better software. Understanding the problem space, developing a shared language to communicate about it, decomposing a problem into smaller problems, and implementing a solution for them. The domain-driven design community has come up with a lot of different tools and methods and basically different practices to help achieve these goals. We are going to use one of the most popular ways called event storming to help understand the problem space. Now for this video series, I'm going to use the example domain of a hackathon system, more specifically a hackathon judging. So imagine there's a hackathon, the participants are going to submit a bunch of projects, there's going to be some judges for different categories who are going to look at those projects, and at the end we will have some winners. This is vaguely the area that we are going for, and I'm choosing this because I've organized hackathons in the past. I've also built a hackathon judging system in the past. It's something that I know quite a bit about, and I can show very easily how and why we would use domain-driven design for an application like this. Event storming is a kind of workshop where you get a bunch of people together and you use sticky notes to help model what the domain looks like. Now, I don't really have any sticky notes on me, so instead what we are going to use is a tool by this video sponsor, Eraser. I'll talk more about Eraser at the end of the video, but they're basically a diagramming tool which we can use to do things like event storming in a virtual setting quite easily. One of the things I really like about Eraser is the text documentation section, so I can use that for explaining what we are doing or to store some sort of a documentation about the diagram that we are making. So here I have a small description of what an event storming session is and what an event is. Events are basically facts or records of something that happened that we are interested in, that this domain is concerned with. So let me just start by examples. Let me switch to canvas only here for a while. So an event that we might be interested in a hackathon judging setting is a project was submitted. Let's make this a little smaller and make this a square because we are emulating sticky notes, so it would be nice if everything is square. Now this is an example of an event. We are basically trying to model what a real-world hackathon looks like. What are some things that we need to take care of or make records of? Another event that we might find interesting is that a project was ranked. So in the specific hackathon that we are trying to model here, judges don't give projects a score. Instead, they rank projects in like a top 3 or top 5 setting, and then later we use those ranks to give them scores. So for example, a project on rank 1 receives 5 points, a project on rank 5 receives 1 point. This gives us a more objective way to rank projects, and we don't have to deal with like different scores or different baselines, whatever. But basically what that means is that once a project is ranked, we can also give the project a score. So once all the judges have given a project some ranks, we can combine them together to come up with a score, and then we can decide the winners. So winners decided. And the winners will obviously just be the projects with the highest score. So this is essentially what event storming looks like. You get a bunch of people who know about hackathon or the specific hackathon that we are organizing. We get them in a room and we get all of them to come up with events, come up with interesting things or things that we need to store, we need to make a record of that are important to us, and we put them on a board. Now some other things that we might be interested in is a judge signing up. Now this would be before the hackathon. We might have some sort of a sign-up process for judges that we would send out, and then anyone who's interested in being a judge would fill out that form, and then we can decide if they're going to judge at the hackathon or not. Another interesting thing are categories. So for our hackathons, we have a bunch of different categories like best design or best use of Google Cloud, things like that. Sponsors also get their own categories. The point is that we are interested in when a category was added, or let's say category decided. Now we're not going to have the same person judge for the UI UX category and also for the machine learning category. They're different specialties. So when a judge signs up, we also assign them to a category. So we'll say judge assigned to category. And I'll reduce the size a little bit so that we can keep it square and simple. Oh, and another thing that I just remembered, we also put judges in a group. Because at our hackathons, we want to have a lot of judges, but we also cannot have one project give like 10 different presentations to 10 different judges. So what we'll often do is we put 3 or 4 judges together in a group and we send that group to look at projects together. So the project only has to do 2 or 3 presentations and not 10 of them, which means we are also interested if a judging group was created. So these are all the events that I can think of for now. When you're doing event storming, depending on the complexity or the scope of what you're building, what kind of software you're building, or the domain that you're working with, you'll probably have a lot of events. And by that, I mean a lot of events. But obviously for the scope of this video series, we are going to try to keep it limited. Now, the next thing that you might want to do once you have a good number of events is put them in sort of a timeline order. A project can only be scored after it's ranked, and it can only be ranked after it's submitted. A judge can only be assigned to a category after they sign up, but also after a category has been decided. We can make some more space here. We can only decide the winners after they're scored. Judges can only start ranking their projects after they have been put together in a group. So we'll need a little more space here. Let's move it here, put this in here. Now for these two, it kind of depends on the domain. This is why you need collaboration. This is why you need domain experts in the room. Now here we might have to ask a question. Are judges allowed to sign up, or do we allow judges signing up before the categories have been decided or not? Maybe we want to decide all the categories first before sending out any sign-up forms, so that the sign-up forms can include a list of categories that the judge is signing up for. Or maybe we don't care about that. Maybe we just ask for interest through the sign-up form and we decide the categories in parallel, and once they are signed up, later we will assign them to a category. These are the kind of rules in the domain that we are working with that we will discover through this process. Like, this is not something that would probably have been brought up unless we start working on the code and we are really deep into it. But event storming allows us to discover these ambiguous rules pretty easily. So let's say that for this example project that we are building in this example domain, we are just going to send sign-up forms without the categories, and then later when we have all the categories decided, we will start assigning judges to categories, which means these two happen in parallel. They don't have a specific order, but everything else in here is going to be in this order. With this format, we now have a pretty good idea of what happens in this domain. We can start to tell a story about it. So let's start here. Our hackathon organizers will decide on some categories, and they will send out some sign-up forms that if you're interested in judging on the hackathon, you can fill out the sign-up form. Once the categories are decided, and once you have signed up, the organizers can now assign you as a judge for a specific category. So if you have, for example, shown interest in UI UX, or if you are more interested in databases, you can be assigned to a category that has most inventive use of a specific database or something like that. And once all the projects are submitted, we'll create judging groups. So let's say if there are 6 judges that are all judging the UI UX category, we might split them into 2 different groups of 3 judges each, so that each group only has to judge half the projects instead of all the projects. Then you as a judge can go around and rank all the projects that you're looking at. Once all the judges have ranked the projects, we can give them all scores, and once they're all scored, we can decide who the winners are. So not only do we have a much better understanding of how this domain works, of what the processes are, we also have a decent understanding of what these terms are, and we can start to note them down. So let's create a section here called important terms. Let's start with judging group. Since that's an interesting one, we can make this a level 3 header, and we can start noting down some key definitions or properties of a judging group. So we can say that a judging group is a group of judges that are all in the same category, or they're all judging the same category. Judging, or let's say assigned to the same category, because we use the word assigned here. I cannot spell. That look at a subset of all projects that are submitted to the category. Submitted to the category. Cool. And I think this will give a much better idea of what a judging group is for someone looking at this specific note here. We can also add some definitions for project rank and project scored. So for example, we can say a project rank is judges rank the projects they are looking at from 1 to 5. And we can also put that rank 1 gets 5 points, rank 5 gets 1 point, and so on. And finally, these points are, or we can put this in a new one, let's say project score. After each rank is converted to a score, aggregate all the scores together to come up with the final score of the project. And we should probably also specify that a project gets a different score for each category it was submitted to. So you can see that we have a much better idea of what the domain looks like. Now, I'm probably not doing the best job at this because I'm the only one in this workshop. Event storming really works best if it's kind of a one person is explaining and the other person is trying to understand dynamic there. Because really event storming is all about the collaboration. It's the process where domain experts try to explain to software developers what the domain looks like, so that when software developers go and write the code for it, we have a much better idea of what we are doing. The other thing that we can do from here is to identify specific areas that we need to work on. We can start asking questions of what a specific process or a collection of 2 or 3 events looks like. What is the work that goes into it, and how difficult it is to automate it, or how much value can we get out of automating it. For example, these processes are probably not that valuable because they're not that intensive. We have a lot of time to do it, and we only have like maybe 20 to 25 judges who sign up. So it's probably not the most valuable to spend time working here. However, coming up with judging groups and scoring the projects out of every rank that it's been given by different judges for different categories, these are a lot more work intensive, and there's a lot of time limitations involved. Like for example, we have to go through the entire judging process within 2 or 3 hours. This is something that would be a lot more valuable for us to work on for automating. And we can have these conversations because we have a very good idea of what the entire domain looks like, and we can now zoom in and focus on the areas that are more valuable to us that we should be working on. Now, I can talk about event storming for hours. Really, there's a lot more that we can do here, and I'll be exploring that in my upcoming videos. I encourage you to just come up with some sort of a domain that you know about and just to try event storming on your own about something random. And if you do that, make sure you're using Eraser. Eraser is the diagrams and documentation hub for engineering teams. Since launching in March of 2021, hundreds of thousands of users have used Eraser to draw architecture diagrams, create technical planning docs, conduct whiteboard interviews, and sketch wireframes. Eraser differentiates with developer-targeted features like Markdown notes, diagram as code, and keyboard-first flowcharting. I've been using Eraser for all my projects for the last month or so, and I'm really enjoying the experience. So if you want to try it out, go to tryeraser.com/dev, and that'll let them know that I sent you there. Thank you, Eraser, for sponsoring this video. If you like this video, please let me know by clicking that like button. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe so that you don't miss the next video in the series, because trust me, there is so much you can do with event storming. See you in the next one.